That was a good clap.
It's really good.
Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jeremy Pogue, and today I have some very special guests. So with me, we have our CSM, Eduardo, Eric Davis, who coaches people how to play guitar online, and Jake Lewis, who coaches drone pilots on how to make more money. So These two have gone through the program, these two run the program, and today we're just gonna talk and have a conversation and kind of talk about their success. I've never done one of these before where it's kind of like a double thing, but yeah, we're just gonna have a good conversation. So anyways, Eric, let's start with you. Give us a little background. Who are you? What do you do? And what have you been able to do as well?
Well, I have always been a guitar teacher. So I started playing guitar when I was 12 years old, and then I started teaching guitar when I was 16, and now I'm 32, so I've been teaching guitar for about 16 years. And, you know, I grew up like identifying as an artist, identifying as an emotional guitar musician. So like business acumen was not something that I acquired on my own. So I got to this position where, you know, I had been teaching guitar full time and kind of tired of just the one-on-one thing. So I developed a curriculum for a group model and was doing that on my own a little bit, but just like didn't have the business fundamentals. And that's when I really like found Summit Acquisition, and I was able to make an actual business and use systems that actually work so that I can attract new clients, give them an offer that they can pay a lot of money for, and send them through a world-class program that by the end of it, they're just like, they're thanking me so much for allowing them to go through the program. And it's just really like this like everyone wins kind of situation. So I think we were talking about this recently, but the month that just happened, like the month of March, my business did like 19 times more than an average month from like 2023. Wow. So I've been doing this, you know, for the past almost year and a half. And I did a lot of it on my own. And things are like so much better since I started working with Summit Acquisition, having awesome coaches like you guys, and then being in an awesome community where, you know, I get to like hang out and do one-on-ones with, you know, everyone in the community. And hanging out in person has been just like the cherry on top.
In person hits different.
Yeah.
It hits completely different. So yeah, that's awesome, Eric.
Yeah.
I got a couple questions because I know a lot of people are going to be wondering too.
Let's go.
How much do you charge? And kind of what did you do last month?
So the program's $4,000. In the month of March, I collected $39.6 thousand cash. And then, and then a little more in terms of, you know, sometimes we do a little payment plan, something like that. But
the world's highest paid guitar teacher. I think we can claim that title.
Oh, yeah. It's possible.
But, yeah. Congratulations, man. That's awesome. Seriously. We'll dive into that in a minute as well. But Jake, mind giving a quick little intro as well?
Yeah, for sure. So, been with Summit Acquisition for maybe 2.5, 3 months now. Been absolutely amazing. Being in the program, I mean, I had an idea of what it was going to be like, and it just blew my expectations away. A little bit about me. So I've been flying drones professionally for about 6 years. Started my drone business in 2018. Before that, I've spent 4 years in the cockpit flying actual planes, and after the 4 years decided, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to fly in planes. I want to fly drones instead. And that's really what made me start the business. And since then, been grinding, building the business to the point that it's gotten to. And along the way, drone pilots all over the place kept reaching out going, how are you making money flying drones? I want to do this. This is my passion. This is really what I want to do. How have you been able to get to where you're at? And so last year, I officially launched the coaching program to help other drone pilots get their first paid gig or get their license and get consistency in all that, and just how to run a business and how to shoot good content. There's so many pieces that go into that. And after 6 years, I eventually figured it out. And so yeah, I was doing organic for about a year on Instagram, just grinding it out. Sucked, but you know, I had gotten to like 5K a month and was like, man, this is great. But I knew to get to the next level, I needed to run ads. And I was like, I don't know how to do it, but I know this is what I need to do. And then I saw you on IG, and it was like, if you're this type of person trying to get this result, and it was exactly me. It was like, okay, like he seems like he knows what he's doing with ads, because this ad is bomb. And if he can write a good ad here, he probably can do one for me. And so it was like perfect timing, because I was like, I need to do ads. I don't know how to do it. And then you came up. And so last month or 2 months ago, made 13K. That was the most. And then 10K this last month, building it out. And then this first week has been like 5-6K. So
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
3 of it today, actually, too,
yeah,
which is amazing. So
yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm really proud of you. And yeah, your growth has been super cool to watch and be a part of.
Thanks, dude.
And like barely scratching the surface still, too.
Yeah,
There's a lot of room to grow.
we got some room to go for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Curious, like, kind of like stepping back, like out of the program specifically, just like in general in like your business career and everything, like what's been, like what are some of the most powerful lessons you guys have learned? Like, I think it'd be cool to kind of steer the conversation from like a, kind of like a program specific kind of thing to just like actually like dropping real value to like people that are watching. Cause I know a lot of people that watch the channel are like, they're kind of like itching for that, right? And maybe they're stuck where you guys were at before as well, and doing the organic grind or just whatever. Because I know a lot of people lose hope when they're doing the same shit for a long time, and then there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So what was that like for you guys, and kind of like how do you kind of like get through that and just kind of like keep going and keep pushing stuff like that to be able to like kind of unlock the exponential growth?
Yeah, man. So it kind of sounds like a two-part question, if I'm hearing you correctly. One would be like some general business wisdom, and then the other one would be kind of like how to keep pushing through when it's tough. So that's really clear. I think in terms of general business, especially for me, like identifying as an artist and a musician for the majority of my life, I always had a big resistance towards like sales in general. Like I felt like, you know, art is valuable in and of itself, and I don't need to sell anything, and I never want to be a sellout. But really getting to the point of understanding that, you know, sales, when it's done correctly, that sales is service. And the way that you can have that is that when other people have a problem that they want solved, and you have a product that actually solves that problem, then you can initiate like into sales, and it can be a service to that person because they really like want their problem solved, and your product that you're selling actually does that. So having that reframe of like how helpful it can be to sell people to help them solve their problems. And now I'm in a position where like I love being sold. Like if someone has the solution to the problem that I have, I'm like, yes, like please sell me. Like I want what you're selling so that I can solve my problems. So that's kind of like the biggest general business thing that has been helpful for me. And then I think also specifically anyone who might feel similar to me as like an artist or a musician or something. And then in terms of like how to push through when stuff gets tough, my honest opinion is this kind of like the phrase is like burning the boats. And it's basically a cute little way of saying like putting your back against the wall and organizing your situation so that there's no way out but through. So the story goes, and I think that most people don't know if this is a true story or not, but back in the times of like Spartans or something, there was an army that sailed across the sea to like get to the other side to like fight the enemy army, and
the Summit Soldiers.
Exactly, the Summit Soldiers. And then once the Summit Soldiers, once we got to the land, Jeremy in his infinite wisdom, burned the boats to the ground. The idea is that like the army had no way back, that the only way to get home was through this enemy army. And like for a majority of the past 12 months, like I've had $0, just like credit cards, like just making enough to get by, and literally like being all in, having no way out, like no parents, no family, no like friends that were going to come to my rescue. Like I was going to do this or something very bad was going to happen. And maybe that method doesn't work for everybody, but I'm just a very like all in kind of person.
That's awesome, man. What was that like? Like, what were some of the emotions you were feeling, like, kind of like just scraping by? Because I'd imagine a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people too that are kind of just like a lot of people lose faith and like go get a job or like something like that to kind of get some more security and stability. But yeah, what were you kind of telling yourself in that time to just kind of keep going? Was it something like you had a very clear vision on kind of where you were going and like what you were working on, and that you just had this unshakable faith? And like I kind of talk about those two things hand in hand a lot, because that was the case for me. But like, was it something like that for you, or was it just completely different?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're saying like, what did I tell myself when things got tough?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Like when the money was low, like the bank account was starting to drop and get emptier and emptier, credit cards starting to go up and stuff like that. Like most people would probably be like, okay, this business thing isn't for me. Time to go get a job. Right? Yeah. Did you ever have those thoughts?
No. I mean, that's the honest answer. I'm trying to come up with something that would be valuable for someone who felt that way. Dude, like, I'm just gonna be real. Good. Like, if you have those thoughts, then maybe entrepreneurship isn't for you.
Eric, I was just gonna say the same thing.
Like, I'm sorry to kind of be controversial, but like, look, like I let a very specific kind of guitar player into my program. It's not for everybody. You let a very specific kind of business owner into your program. It's not for everybody. And that's part of the reason why the community is as great as it is, because like the stuff isn't for everybody. I'm not saying that like it wasn't hard at times, and maybe there were times where I felt like giving up, but the actual option to give up, that was never in my mind, not once.
That's awesome. Yeah, same thing with me. I remember just like in the parents' basement, just like grinding her out, and just. But I literally told myself, I will never get a job. I will do whatever it takes. Awesome. I will not get a job. Wow. Because I had a whole bunch of like shitty ones and whatever. I'm like, I will do this for as long as it takes. And yeah, and then one thing led to another. I ended up getting a job for another coach, my business coach at the time. But it didn't feel like one. It was more of like an apprenticeship to slingshot me to the next one. I more so meant like a 9-to-5 kind of deal.
A conventional
One. Yeah. So that's really cool. And Jacob, I know for you, like shifting from kind of the organic grind to launching ads, I'm kind of going a bit of a different direction, but we were talking about this earlier, and it's like, because you have a very like specific niche offer, right? You only work with established drone pilots who have this specific license already, and then you help them kind of go from there. I know a lot of people have a really hard time getting qualified leads, especially like through organic and stuff like that. So like, what were some of the key lessons that like you learn now that like if you're looking back, let's say even like 3-4 months ago or just last year, like what would you tell yourself or somebody right now that's in a similar position that's like kind of like fighting to make it work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, really the riches are in the niches. I mean, you hear that a lot, but even my niche, like drone pilots trying to build drone businesses and make money flying drones, very, very niche. But even in that, there's still different niches of people who don't have their license yet, people who have their license but haven't made a dollar, people who are grinding it out but want to go full time. It's like there's still niches inside of my niche. And I got advice from a previous coach that said, you got to go more broad. There aren't enough leads for your niche. Like there just aren't enough. And I remember thinking like, is that really like right? So now I need to speak to other people who are just thinking about ways to make money, and like maybe I'll try drones. Like there's still so many people for my offer. And even like your offer, like 5 to 30K a month. Like when I first heard that, I was like, are there enough people that are coaches that are in that? Apparently there are. And like you're crushing it because it is so like dialed in. And I think a lot of people want to have like this speak to everybody. Like let's get as many people in my audience as possible and try to sell to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can dial it in better, like that's why it's been so easy for me with the first ad that I ran. I haven't changed it since day one. Like it just hits hard because it's exactly speaking to my previous self 6 years ago. And it's very specific. So it's not going to be like showing up in your guys' feed. It's going to be showing up in aspiring drone pilots who are interested in some level the drone industry and stuff. And I think people just don't want to do that because they're afraid. They're like, oh man, there are only so many of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, one, like I know exactly the pain points of that person because I was that person 6 years ago. So being able to say exactly like what I was dealing with and how I've overcome it. And then also like believing that there are plenty of people that could get value. I think that that's really helped me a ton, and not going broad.
Yeah.
Even though people are like, yeah, go broad. It's like, nah, dude, no way.
That's a really good point because a lot of people kind of underestimate how many people are actually out there. And yeah, I know like we were at the Hormozy event last week, and just the way that they were talking about like specific numbers and stuff like that, it's like they're like, yeah, like you can take almost any niche to like 500 or like $1 million a month. We're like, okay. But that's how like most people start. Like all the big dogs, is like they started very specific, and then they maxed that out, made millions there, and then started to go a little bit broader, and then a little bit broader, and then pretty general. Most people I think make the mistake of starting out here, right? But yeah, that's really interesting because yeah, a lot of people, I hear it a lot, they're afraid of like niching down as well. I'm curious, like when it comes to like competition and stuff like that, like do you guys have any competitors? Is there anybody else like doing what you guys are doing? Because I know it's like super niche down, right?
I mean, not for me really. I mean, there's a couple, but like most of the people are selling courses on how to get the like drone license in the US specifically. And then they maybe have like an additional upsell offer that is like, here's a way that you could potentially make money, or here's just some resources. But like, there's maybe like one or two other like drone business coaches that are, so.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's easy to sell money.
Yeah.
That's
when
great.
you're actually good.
Yeah. Exactly. Because like a lot of the people also are like, selling something that they haven't done.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you gone out and like made money flying drones? Like, do you know what that's like?
Yeah.
And like, to what extent too? Like, have you been successful, or is this kind of the fallback plan?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I see a lot of business coaches helping coaches get to 50K a month, and they haven't even got to 5.
I mean, it's funny. We've seen that a lot, and that's actually something that a point that I wanted to dive deeper as you were sharing your story. But something that I wanted to point out. Can you please remind us again how many years you spent playing guitar before you took this off the ground?
Yeah, so I've been playing guitar for 20 years, and then I've been teaching guitar for 16.
You've been flying drones for 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years flying drones, 10 years in the aviation industry.
Yeah. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because a lot of people see guys like you come to the program and they're like, oh, Eric 19x'd his business from last year to this year in only 3 months. Jacob went from, in just the span of 2 months, from like doubling and basically almost tripling your business in your first month. And people see that and it's like, oh, it's that overnight success. It's like this online thing, looks like it's for everyone. But I just want to emphasize on like that specifically, all the work that goes in the back end that a lot of these people miss, right? It's like you can't fake, like you say, a lot of these guys that we see in the industry that are doing stuff that they have no idea how to do, or that they have never, been able to coach someone on how to do it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing that is, I think, an interesting season that we're going through in this whole online coaching space, because there's a lot of lack of trust in the market right now. It's something we were speaking about the other day in a very nice long podcast that we recorded. But yeah, and it's really inspiring to find and see cases like yours. But I think it's just important to emphasize on that, because a lot of people in the industry, the reason why there's this lack of trust, they just speak about like, oh yeah, you just launch a business from your phone, your computer, and you're like 3 days later going to be making $100,000 a month, something like that. And they set these unrealistic expectations, because yes, it is true and it is possible to like blow up your businesses the way that you two have done in such like a, hard, like you would have never imagined that doing that in a niche like yours, you would have been able to blow your businesses that fast. But people avoid speaking of that, all of that experience and work, like those 20 years playing guitar, 6 years doing this yourself. So yeah, I think it's an interesting thing that it's important to mention. Just
actually good coaches.
Yeah.
So you're actually good at what you do.
Yeah, and like sales can get you like far, but it can only get you so far. But you, like you're saying, those guys like are really good at sales, but then the back end, the delivery is crap. And that's like the problem. It's like they're not necessarily a good coach. And you see both sides, really, really amazing coaches who are terrible at sales.
yeah.
And like, I'd probably rather have that, because there's value there.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah,
And that's exactly who we want.
yeah, it's like you got to get good at both. And I think a lot of people get by with the salesman. And then all of a sudden it's like, why are the clients falling off? Why are they not getting results?
Yeah.
Because you haven't spent the 10 years in the trenches doing it to then figure out how to teach it.
Trying to take a shortcut. Yeah.
Did you guys ever think that you'd like do online coaching or this, like before you start, like let's say like a few years ago?
Dude, pre-COVID, like people would teach online and I hated it. I tried it a couple times and I just like, I told myself I would never teach online. And then of course COVID comes around and it took me 6 months to learn how to teach online in a way that I felt really like proud of, like a service that I could provide that I felt proud of. And then with like my guitar offer now, I don't allow beginners in my program. Like it's for a very specific kind of guitar player who wants a very specific kind of education and understanding. That's almost a little more cerebral and like a little more like conversational oriented. So it happens to work really well online. The only thing that we really can't do online is like sit in the same room and like jam together at the same time, which is a bit of a bummer. But no, I've been really like happy and surprised at how much growth my students can make, online.
That's so cool. I got a question too, because I know people watching this are gonna. I've gotten many DMs as well, just like posting some of your wins on my story for like, oh, Eric just hit 40K this month with his guitar coaching business.
Not bad.
His online guitar, and people are like, how? How did you sell it for 4K? And like, they're like struggling to sell theirs for like 3 or like 2K or something like that, but they have like an offer where they should be selling it for like a lot more. So like, I know it didn't always start there,
Yeah.
So what was that process like, kind of like building it up to 4K? What was kind of like some of the lessons that you've learned along the way when it comes to like kind of more so like the positioning and kind of the sales aspect there?
Yeah, great question. So when I first started this group offer like 14, 15 months ago, I had no idea what I was doing. So I was like, it's $300. So the first group of people that I had go through the program, there was 15 of them. And they were all either like extended network, like old students, friends of friends. And there was actually one guy that I sold from Instagram, who was a lead from Instagram, who I'd never met before. But in that group of 15 people, I started selling it at $300, and I slowly raised the price and got to $500. And that lead from Instagram, he was the guy who paid $500. And the whole time I had no resistance on price. So I was like, I have no idea how much this program is worth. So then, maybe 3 or 4 months after that, I was struggling to get more leads on Instagram. So that's when I started working with my first coach. And he introduced me to like the high ticket model. And I started understanding like the virtuous cycle of price and the vicious cycle of price, which is basically like the idea that the higher you raise the price, the more that the clients are invested, the more success that the clients get, the better testimonials that they're able to provide for you, the better your marketing, the better your sales is. Like it's just this like, the higher you raise your price, it's like everything gets better. And then the opposite also happens, which is the vicious cycle of price. And you know, to an extent, like I'm not going to sell a guitar program that's like $30 million. Like at a certain point, that theory like breaks down. But the idea of going from, you know, $500 to like $3,000, it was like, oh, okay, that's like a really big jump. And then I've basically, over the past, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, have been like raising it from 3,000 to 4,000. And that jump from 3K to 4K is really like the strength of client testimonials and just having more of them available. And then also my own sales skills, helping people just kind of work through their fears during the sales call. Because the higher the number, the more scared they are to, you know, give up that cash, which I totally understand. But it's like now I'm at the point where I've had so many people finish my program having paid $4,000, and they end up getting more out of the program because they take it more serious and they're more invested in it. So now, like, I feel I would feel bad, you know, charging someone $3,000 because I know that they're not going to get as much out of it.
I love that. A few things I kind of want to touch on and kind of double click on and go a little deeper. So raising the price 6x from 500 to 3K, that's a lot. It's a big leap, right?
Yeah.
But then again, you've noticed that, well, just kind of taking a bit of a step back here, actually, because like we've been talking about this whole week as well, and you didn't start at 4K. I think that's what a lot of people kind of miss. Yeah. I didn't start charging what I'm charging now. Yeah. When I started, it was the same thing. When I started my agency like years ago, my first client paid me $200 a month because I was like, I think I was ignorant and like very like I knew my place. I don't know if you want to call it humble or whatever, but it's like I didn't have any case studies. I didn't have any results. And in my mind, I was like, I am terrible. I'm the worst. I need to earn the right to charge more.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did, right? Exactly like what Eduardo did. Like, do you want to talk about kind of like when you first started your coaching business too, and like your first handful of clients, like, because it's the same thing. And then like my first one for Summit was like 1,500, and then 2K, then 2.5, then 3, and then like slowly over time, like 8 months later, it was like up to 8K, right? And then it's it won't be that for much longer. Yeah. But,
get in while you can.
Seriously, yeah.
High value for 8K.
Yeah. Do you guys think it's underpriced? Should we raise it?
I don't know if I want to say that, but the value is 100% there. And I'm just very glad that I got in there.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think summit scale for 12K is a no-brainer. Like I still think 12K is like no-brainer.
Yeah. How'd you know that's the number? Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I'd love to hear kind of.
Yeah, going back to that. First of all, this was my third round in terms of like my third offer in the coaching business. So after going through my first 2 rounds and learning some tough lessons along the way that I'm gonna leave for a different conversation, it's just going back to that, like, yes, because, I mean, and you're saying this, and it's implicit for you because you're actually good at what you do. But when you're speaking about raising prices, you do it, like, it's paired with the value that you're providing.
Sure.
For your case, not for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
So you're saying like, oh yeah, I was raising my price and people were happy to pay. Why? Because at the end of your program, as you're saying right now, because they had such an amazing experience, they were like, hey, thank you for convincing me to join this and for providing the value that you provided. Why? Because in the end, price is what people pay, but value is what they receive. And the bigger the gap between those two, in terms of like the value that they get, hopefully, and not the other way around, right? But the better the business. So I learned that lesson after my first 2 rounds, my first 2 offers. So when I launched my new offer, first of all, after going through a bunch of certifications and just putting in reps to become better as a coach, because I realized that in this industry, there were a lot of like really good, amazing marketers and salespeople that call themselves coaches, but the only thing that they knew was to, you know, charge a credit card. And as soon as the payment went through, they disappeared. Vanished.
Wow.
So after learning that lesson myself, I was like, I never want any of my clients to experience that. I would rather it be the opposite way, having objective data of people telling me like, hey, this is amazing, charge more, instead of being like, I don't think I should have paid as much as I paid for this thing, right? So I started low. Actually, I started as low as like 0 for the first 5 people, because I heard this quote from Warren Buffett once, I think when he was like first starting his investment career. He asked, I think I don't remember who was his mentor. I don't want to, but the guy that he was learning who to invest from, he told him like, hey, I will work for free for you. And the other guy replied, bro, you are overpriced. Why? Because we're not only paying with money, we pay with time, energy, and attention, which are more valuable assets. So I knew that, and I was like, okay, I'm launching my new offer in my beautiful head, and with all of the work that I've been putting in, like literally for a month, I spent an entire month just locked in my room, building my MVP. I was like, I know this is good, but I don't have objective data to back this up. So I'm going to offer this for free for the first 5 people, get real feedback. So that's what I did. First 5 people got amazing feedback. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to start selling these for 500. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I always want to make sure that I'm delivering at least 10x value versus the price. So then I started 500 for the next 5 people. I got the feedback and they were like, bro, you should charge 5K for this thing. And I'm like, I will at some point. So next 5 people, 1K. Next 5 people, 1,500. Things started like ramping up that way. And it was just like this process that I've heard a lot of people, I mean, Jeremy, you did something similar. Eric, you did something similar. Maybe it wasn't conscious, but it's basically that thing that you're not selling just based on like the recommendation of someone who has honestly no fucking clue on what you do. And that they just tell you, because I had that. I had some coaches in the past that had no idea. I'm not kidding. I had this one coach who was always, he was like, yeah, Eduardo is a life coach. And he does this, like he was always putting my testimonial saying that I was a life coach. And I told him, like, bro, I'm not a life coach. I do this. He didn't give a fuck. And that's what showed me that he truly didn't care. And he was always saying like, yeah, bro, just raise your prices, raise your prices. I'm like, okay, but based on which grounds, you know? So I think it's that thing of, yes, it is all about raising your prices, but you can only do that, at least for a long term, and sustain that if you're backing it up with like a really good program and objective data. Then what you're giving back in return in terms of value is worth at least the price that they paid. But in my opinion, should be at least 2x, 5x. I mean, ideally even 10x, right? So that was kind of my story after the first 2 rounds. And that's how things started taking off, which is, again, going back to not taking any shortcuts and actually having walked the walk and, backing up raising those prices with real and objective data and feedback of people on what works for them. So yeah.
I think people are just kind of afraid to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and kind of just work for a little bit and eat shit, get kicked in the teeth, dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
But like, that's the fun part for me. Like my buddy Kyle, he follows Wes Watson a lot, and he's like, oh yeah, like Wes has a quote. He's like, most people are looking for a way out of the struggle, way out of the pain. He's like, I'm looking for a way in. But like that's the case, right? It's like all of us. It's just a testament. It's like we were just eating shit for a long time, building the character traits, the skill set, and just the experience, the expertise to be able to do what we're doing now. I think coaching's the worst business model anybody could ever do if they don't have any experience on anything.
Yeah.
Right? And I think a lot of people kind of get sold into that. We're like, oh, you just start a coaching business, super profitable, you make a ton of money very quickly, right? But then if you're just building a house of cards, it's going to collapse like very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of people are just kind of afraid to actually just work, just do the boring stuff, build their own skill set and whatnot. But then again, that's hard, it sucks, and it's not fun. But in the long term, it is what's fun, right? So, that's appreciate you sharing that. And I know, Jacob, same thing with you, man, right? It's like you weren't always charging $2K.
Yeah, I'm at like 2,500 for the one if someone doesn't have their license, and then 4,500 for if someone's more advanced with theirs. But yeah, I mean, I started out. My first one was like a 1,500 for 3 months, and I was like over the moon. Like, oh my God, I can't believe like I got this, and I'm gonna give everything I can, do this one-on-one. And then I started selling like at the $300 a month mark for like a 3-month commitment. So it was like 900 basically. And then like little by little started raising prices. And yeah, I mean, the more people pay, the more attention they pay.
Totally.
And it's just crazy, like you said, that cycle. What was that called?
Yeah, there's the virtuous cycle of price when the price goes up, and then there's the vicious cycle of price when the price goes down. And shout out to Alex Hormozy, $100 million offers. That's where I learned it from. I know Alex who?
Yeah. And that's just such a good, I mean, it's so important to like get around that. Like there is a point, like you were saying, you can't charge like $500,000 for, a program, but there comes a point where the price.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. But like the higher it is on like the willingness for people to pay, it's like you're gonna have better clients at that higher price point. And like, I don't know who I was talking to, but it was like at that $300 a month mark, they're not as committed. It's like, oh, if it works, great. If it doesn't, like whatever. Like it was a fun thing for $1,000. But if you pay $4K, like you're like, all right, let's make this happen.
Yeah.
There's something that I want to add to that. I totally agree with like people pay more, they pay more attention, but that's like two sides of the coin, which means that if your program is good, and that's why every conversation that we speak about, even sales marketing, we always end up speaking about, at least that's what happens in our team meetings. Like regardless of what's the topic, we always end up speaking about client success, which is honestly, I think the main reason why we have the success that we have as a company. But people pay more, they pay more attention, but that also means that they pay more attention to the program that you deliver, which makes you raise your standards. And the problem, or at least that I see with a lot of people in the industry, is they are not willing to put in that work to actually level up their standards, because that thing ends up eating you up. And how many times we've seen that, like big names coming up, being, top dogs in the industry for, I don't know, a year or two, but then yes, people pay more, they pay more attention. And if your program fucking sucks, they're going to notice, and they're going to tell other people, and word of mouth is going to eat you up. So, and the only reason why I'm emphasizing on those things is just because I think and with all of the stuff going on in the industry right now, with like this lack of trust and like a lot of people getting into this virtuous
cycle of price,
yeah,
which is the good one.
The good one, yeah.
And then vicious cycle of price.
So I think the industry, what we've seen is shifting a lot towards the vicious cycle of price. Why? Because the market is getting sophisticated to not be eating anyone else's bullshit in terms of like, hey, I don't believe you're going to be able to deliver. So instead of people leveling up their standards in their client success, they're like, oh, let me just lower my price, right? But which presents a really good opportunity for the people who actually are good at what they do. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize on that side of the equation, because I've seen a lot of people in the industry always speak about like, yeah, raise your prices and do this and that. But it's like, yes, but no one speaks about like the thing that happens on the other side of those things. And I think you're a great example of like, yes, you do that. And for you guys, it's implicit because you're, I mean, not only good human beings, but you're actually good at what you guys do in your businesses. So for you, it's like, yeah, if I'm raising my prices, I'm delivering more value. But I know it sounds crazy for the four of us speaking about that here, but for a lot of people watching this or in the industry, they don't think it that way. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to raise my prices, and they don't back it up. So I think it's, a great example that you guys, embody with what you do.
And yes, probably, I know I felt this, but like when you sign like your first client that paid you like more money than like you thought someone ever would, so like $1,500 or whatever, you're like, it forces you to elevate your standards, like you said, Eduardo, where you're like, holy shit. And you're almost like, fuck, now I gotta deliver.
Yep.
Right? And it kind of makes you like a little nervous. You're like, shit. But I think that's good for like one time. It's good to kind of feel that like once. Maybe like at different levels too. I think that would scale. But still, because then it does force you to kind of step up and like actually build a really good process and program and client experience. Otherwise, like if you don't, then you can kind of just get used to not providing incredible experience, and then people just have like subpar results. Yeah. And then when people ask, and they'll eat you up. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's what's so good about your program. It's like there's so many people just winning all the time, and like you're just seeing it on your stories, like another win, another win, another win. It's like, okay, sweet. And that like is because you care about the program, you care about the people in it, and you're always like growing it to make it better. Like, how can I streamline this? How can I make it better? Because like you actually care about it and you know what it takes to do it. You're not just like, well, let's see. I mean, I think this might work. It's like, no, like you know what's going to work. And if people are willing to put in the work, like it's a no-brainer. And I think some people, like you were saying, are not wanting to put in the work. It's like, well, you're never going to get anywhere regardless, no matter what program you buy.
Yeah.
If you're not doing the work, you're not going to get any results.
Yeah.
But like your guy, like with this program, it's like you get the results if you put in the work.
Yeah, it's like do you want to get rich quick, or do you want to get wealthy, in the long term? Like,
yeah.
That's good.
Rich quick or wealthy for sure. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of funny like the way that we've set it up, where it's like we kind of force you to do the work. Literally in the first like 48 hours, it's like give you lots of homework to do, and then it's like, okay, we're doing this, scripting the ads right away, getting those launched, and just like moving very quickly. And like that's a really important aspect of client success too, is just like reducing the time to value closest to zero as possible. And like Alex, who he's been helping me build out a lot of these systems in the back end and stuff, kind of rebuilding the program and all of that. That's like kind of one of his core tenets as well. And he told me that last year, almost a year ago, I think, actually, we had a conversation, and I think we did a podcast on his channel. And that was one of the things he was like telling me. I'm like, that's genius. So I kind of took that, ran with it, applied to the program, and then just kind of like literally flipped the whole thing on its head. It's like ads, like every other ads program I've gone through, it was always just like, all right, intro, like you sign up, onboarding call, like intro, mindset, then like general stuff, and then like offer stuff, and then marketing, and then setting, and sales, and then like landing page, and then all the other fucking bullshit, and then ads. But it's like people are joining the program to run ads to solve their lead problem.
Yep.
So I was like, why don't we take this all and flip it all on its head? And like you said, Jay, it was like, you haven't even gone through the mindset stuff at the bottom. So like most people don't even finish the damn thing anyways. And mine's like very streamlined and very short.
Yeah.
Intentionally. And I'm like, every time I rebuilt it, I'm trying to squish it down even more, because like maybe it's different for different people because like total beginners, maybe they do need a lot more information. But like guys like you, it's like you don't need more information really. It's just like a few little golden nuggets, a few little tweaks, pull a couple levers, and then you just like skyrocket exponentially. So I think like it's not so much like the information in the course, so as much as it is like kind of the implementation and kind of like the coaching, the application of it,
Yeah.
and just like that guidance and direction that's really important too. So
Yeah, just like no fluff, which is like so great. I mean, I launched my ad within the first week. We scripted it the second day. The only reason I didn't launch it the third day was because I was like super sick and I could barely talk.
yeah,
The second I could actually speak, like I hit it and like it's been going and crushing since day one, you know?
yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any like, were there any constraints or like bottlenecks that came up like after you solved your traffic problem? Like
Yeah, a few.
appointment settings?
Yeah, I mean, definitely just having a ton of like new followers. There's like 50 a day coming in. So you're trying to like hit them all up, see who's potentially qualified,
Yeah,
start those conversations. That was like immediate, where all of a sudden, instead of doing organic, trying to find other people, seeing who like my stuff, now I'm like, oh my God, I've got way too many. So that was a big one. And then I had a pretty good like flow as far as like DM setting and getting people on calls. So then when I was doing that, then the other bottleneck was just sales. And then I had raised my prices, so I wasn't confident in the price at that point. And so then I started losing out on sales calls. I had like 20 sales calls in 1 week, which I was probably averaging like 5 a week before that. Hit the ad, and then it was like 20 in 1 week. And that was like a really tough week. Like I probably had like a 20% close rate. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But it wasn't, it was no longer the like lead problem. It was like, all right, now I got to fix these 3 other things.
yeah.
But it helped me see like what the problem was. I wasn't like, oh man, I need more leads. It's like, no, I need to figure this other stuff out.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite things is creating really good problems for my clients.
Yeah, seriously.
And what a better problem to have. It's like literally like 99.9% of people have that problem of like they just need more leads, right? So that's kind of funny. How about yourself, Eric?
I'm sorry, you're talking, the question is specifically about bottlenecks?
Yeah, like what were some of like kind of like the main constraints that have come up just over the last like, I don't know, let's say 4 to 6 months?
Well, the biggest one is myself, man. Yeah, it's like the business grows, and then the business can only grow as large as like I'm able to handle it. And I think the biggest place that became evident to me recently was just like the way that I was spending my time and attention. I was just like working in this way where I just like ran myself into the ground. I mean, we're talking about working hard, and like you live here in Vegas. We've been here in Vegas for over a week now. We've not partied once. Like not once. Like we've just been doing like 12-hour workdays every day.
We could change that.
That's true. It's true. We do have the option. But yeah, it's like we do like, or at least I'll speak for myself. I work a lot. I work a lot because I enjoy working a lot, but I was working in a way where I was constantly distracted, constantly changing my focus from one thing or another. And I literally got to the point in February, like the first 2 weeks in February, where I was sleeping 9 or 10 hours a day, and I was taking like an hour nap in the afternoon, and I was still just exhausted all day because I was just working so hard. And that's when this man in the flesh saved my life. No, honestly, like that week when I was super exhausted, I had like 8 or 9 sales calls, didn't close any of them. And I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to actually have some energy.
Yep.
So Eduardo helped me get my schedule straight and helped me understand where my attention was going so that I could still work hard all day, but just not in a way where I was just burning the attention candle at both ends. And I think it was like the next week I had like a 10K week or something.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just interesting to me how, you know, like the bottlenecks are so often me. You know, another harmosiism is like either my business is growing or I'm growing. And I found that like very much to be the case. So I love that the entrepreneurial journey is one of self-discovery and self-development. And when push comes to shove, like I'll take the character development over the money any day.
That's awesome. On like a tactical level, just kind of like double clicking on that for both of you, like what was it? How did you identify that you were like working to like, well, obviously like the burnout and energy and stuff like that, but like on a tactical level, like did you like look at your calendar and then like track it, do a time audit, figure out where all your time and attention was going, and that like what did that look like kind of on a tactical level so that somebody could kind of take that and then just like take it and run with it right now? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, well, Eduardo is the king of all this, so he could explain this much better than I could. But from my small beginner perspective, I really think it came down to two things for me. Was one, like understanding how quickly I burn through my attention, because attention is almost like a non-renewable resource in terms of like I'm using it throughout the day, and I'm very much a morning person, so like it's harder for me to work at night than it is in the morning. So burning through my attention too quickly. And then the second thing was learning what recovery actually is. So I would rest in the form of sleeping and like taking naps and sleeping throughout the night, but I wouldn't actually have any rest throughout my day recovery throughout my day where, you know, I could, so before I would just work every moment of every day. Now I'll work in sprints. So I'll work for an hour or two and then take like a 15-minute recovery break. And that's not like just swiping on Instagram or something. That's like going on a 15-minute walk where I'm alone with myself and my eyes are bouncing back and forth and I'm getting some sun into me so that I can come back and actually do another sprint. So that's the second thing, is the recovery piece. And then the first thing, in terms of like burning through my attention too quickly, I would bounce back and forth between too many tasks in too short amount of time. So I'd spend like 5 minutes on this and then I'd get a notification. I'd spend 5 minutes on this and then I'd get another notification. I'd spend 7 minutes on this and literally just bouncing back and forth. Now I'm a lot better about like, okay, I'm going to turn my notifications off and I'm going to work on this thing for an hour and a half. And it really is so simple. Like Eduardo, like you used the analogy of a car, and it's such a great analogy in terms of like before I was just like revving the engine like way too hard and making the car work like way harder than it needed to and just burning through the gasoline. And like now, like I still have that sports car, so I can do that when I need to. But like most of the time, I just need to drive down the highway and like not burn through all my gas in like a 5-mile stretch. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So to add a little bit on that, like what was going on behind that. So I think a couple really good concepts to understand from like a peak performance perspective. First of all, peak performance, the way that I like to explain it is we all have the same amount of time, right? Time is a fixed variable, but we probably can all agree that there are some people in the world that in terms of the results that they get, it's exponentially by a factor of like 10,000, like millions, right? Better than other people, right? So just using examples of names that people know, right? Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. If we speak about their success, financially speaking, right? The amount of money that they've been able to create, I think we can all agree that you cannot just outwork the rest of the people to get the results that they get because it's exponentially bigger, right? So it's just one analogy to make people understand, because people get this wrong the whole time. It's not about time. Time is not the only resource, right? Like we all have the same amount of units of time. So the question is, how do I maximize those units of time as much as possible? And it's through leverage. So leverage is just basically a system that you put in place to get more output per output value per input cost. In this case, how can you get more output value, meaning in your case, for example, sales, money for every hour that you put in. So that's just like the basic concept, right? So when it comes to like tactical things that people watching this can apply, is understanding that we are humans, and it sounds stupid, but I have to remind this to myself and to basically every person that I speak with about this concept, is that we're humans, which means that we're limited with resources, time, energy, and attention. Limited means that they run out. People don't seem to remember that. Running out means they literally, it's like a tank of gas. That's the analogy that I like to use. Like they like, once they're gone, they're gone. Once you use them for something, they're no longer available. So the way that you want to see yourself in terms of like, as a person, if you want to perform at a peak level, which is how can you squeeze as much output per every hour that you put into whatever it is that you're doing, is reminding yourself that people think that the key to peak performance, which was your case before we had that conversation, is people think that the key to peak performance is just performing for as long as possible, when that's not the reality. The reality is that the key to peak performance is going through the cycle as many times as possible. And the cycle, just like basically 4 phases, but I'm not gonna like geek out about it in this conversation, but it's basically 2 things. You're either performing or recovering, right? But you said something really important. Recovery and rest are not the same thing. Rest is not recovery. What do I mean by that? The analogy of the car. Let's assume that you are a car, start of the day, performance car. You go on a race, your tank is full, you start the race, let's say that at the end of that race, your tank is now halfway there. So if between this race and the next one, you just turn off the engine and stay there, and then you start the next race, your new baseline for performance is just half of the tank, right? But you would agree with me that it's a completely different scenario, that if between those 2 races you go and you actually go to the gas station, put the gas pump in the tank of gas and fill up the tank, your new baseline for performance for the next race is again a full tank of gas. So same applies for us humans. Again, we're limited with resources. So if you wake up, you work, and then again, you're seeing yourself as like this thing that has a tank, and your resources start coming down, and then between this session and your next working session, you're just like scrolling in your phone or doing other type of thing that is not filling up your tank, then your baseline for performance for your next work block is going to be half of what it was before, right? So that's the difference between rest and recovery. Resting is just like honestly spending time, wasting time. Recovery is actually doing activities that fill up your tank. Like you should feel energized about that, right? So some of the recommendations for that is 1, trying to limit your working blocks to 90 minutes to 2 hours. That's usually how far you can push it in terms of like how optimal it is, like the output that you're getting for the hours that you're putting in. Like after 2 hours, usually there starts being some like diminishing returns of like the value that you get for every hour that goes by. So it's way more optimal, for example, to do 2 90-minute blocks with a recovery block in between versus like a straight 3 hours, right? Because you're filling up that tank. So trying to limit your work blocks for like 90 minutes to 2 hours, that's the most optimal. And then when it comes to your recoveries, there's nothing that stimulates the brain. So some of the most typical recommendations is going on a nice walk, or I like to pair with like things that I have to do in the day, like eating, for example. So like cook something for myself, going on a walk, meditating, stretching, taking a shower, cold shower, like anything that is literally not stimulating your brain. So it's really important that you don't use like, ideally, don't listen to any podcasts, don't like scroll, like literally turn off your brain as you're doing these things. And if you're doing something that requires a little bit of like focus, like physically, like walking or like the shower or cooking your breakfast, because if you're just like laying in your bed, which can also be a good thing, but like it forces you to like still be doing something and kind of active, but you're not draining your resources. So, and I mean, you can speak for yourself. Like, what are the examples? I think walking was like the one that also worked really well for you. So it's like incorporating those recovery blocks throughout the day. And that's, I mean, long story short, one of the best hacks that you can do to optimize that and go from 0 out of 9 sales calls to having a record week the next week. So prioritizing your sleep and your recovery. It's a little key there. So yeah.
Very well said. So a lot of people, myself included, tend to have that the Goggins syndrome.
Yeah.
To just put your head down, just fucking hammer through it.
Yeah.
But as we were talking about that before, kind of on a run earlier, it's like, it's good, it's a valuable trait to have, as you said, Eric, until it's not.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, I think the concept of leverage is just extremely important there. And most people think it's like, oh, what things can I do in my business to add leverage? How can I add leverage in my business? But as Eric said as well, and like Tom has this, another client, Tom, executive coach, he said this concept like the law of the lid, where it's like the lid is the kind of the growth of the leader. And so the business won't grow because there's that lid on that from the leader. So in order for the business to grow, then like the leader has to grow too, and then the business follows. So that's kind of a good little analogy there to kind of close the loop there. That's awesome, man. I was like mentally just taking all these notes too on how I can improve that, which is really cool too. And that's actually like, that's one thing that's like super cool for me to see too, is just like in the community, there's so many people that just have such a wide like range of skill sets and like just expertise. Cause like you go deep on like peak performance and like you just finished up another certification for that too. And then like you just be an appointment setter and like packing that out, and like you also scale your own coaching business. But then also like Austin, I know you guys have been working with Austin, sales coach, for Summit as well. And like, he is an absolute weapon too. Like he's responsible for over $100 million of sales in the online coaching space and taking like over 7,000 sales calls. So I'm curious like to hear your guys' perspectives. What's been like what has been the impact of just the general like community and kind of like the intangible aspect of like the program? Because on the one hand, there's the tangible, there's like the deliverables, right? It's like the course, the coaching, and like the Slack channel, I guess. But then there's the intangible that is kind of hard to see the value from the outside. But I'm curious to hear you guys' take on like what that's been like on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, the community is awesome. I think a big part is just like the wins, seeing people, winning, seeing like we're all coaches, doing something similar, but every single offer is like unique. Like, and seeing people winning like guitar teaching, like drone operations, like fitness, whatever it is, and seeing people like moving forward, building momentum together, I think is really cool. And also just having like some sort of like support system. I mean, it's not like it's therapy, but on some calls, like people can feel like it sometimes, like sales calls, because you can get to a point where you're like stressed out. And I messaged the Slack channel in sales and I was like, guys, I went 10 calls with 10 no's and like, I'm really like, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm having a really hard week. I just need some support and I'm not the type of person to like reach out like that, but knowing like everyone else is sending DMs, booking calls, getting on sales calls, like trying to get the 30% like amount of closings higher and higher. It's like we're all going through that similar grind, and getting like people's feedback, even like talking about what am I going to do when I'm going out of town and going on vacation? Can I get some help with that? And I think those are some intangibles where it's like, you join for let me get my ads scripted and dialed in. And then also like when I break my systems, my DMs go crazy and my sales is like crap, then having support for all those pieces too, as like, surrounding kind of like the ecosystem of like, we're here for this, but it affects all this other stuff, and getting help there. And just getting to meet up, getting to meet you guys in person. And I think all of that helps. And it's more, that intangible of being a part of a group that is really serious and committed to getting to those goals that, we're setting for ourselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I remember that message. Do you remember what happened after everyone? Because I'm really glad that you brought that up to the channel, because I remember all of the support that people gave you. And what happened after that message?
I mean, Austin was like, he gave me some really good advice, and a couple people I mean, what do you remember?
Someone there saying,
It's late.
speaking of recovery, Alex saying like, have a feeling we'll see you in the Wins channel. After
Yeah.
What happened after that?
Yeah, I mean, I got to win eventually. And just dialed it in. But yeah, having that support when you're like, man, this week sucks.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to have those bad weeks.
And people that understand you, that have been through the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
And yeah, it's a really good point too, because especially with like entrepreneurship, and especially like online businesses, it's like in our town, in our friend group, like nobody else is really doing what we're doing. So a lot of times we feel very isolated, and like we think that the things we're struggling with, the problems that we're having right now, they're unique because I'm special. And like nobody else goes through that. But then, like you said, Jake, it was like every single person in there is running ads, is in the DMs booking calls, is taking sales calls, or like now they've got setters and closers and stuff like that too.
Yep.
Right? So yeah, it's cool to kind of be a part of that where you're like, oh, I'm not the only one going through this.
Yep.
And then kind of leaning on other people like, hey, how'd you get through this? And yeah, I think it's good to like first kind of just acknowledge and like accept that like, oh, okay, this is normal, and to kind of get that like verification and like that confirmation there. And then also just to get the guidance to kind of go through that, because shit hits the fan a lot. A lot of fires come up all the time, and entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, to say the least.
Yeah.
And yeah, so having some sort of structure there and support group, like you said, just other people who are in the trenches doing what you're doing is invaluable. I remember like, yeah, and that doesn't change too. Like I remember a few years ago when I was just getting into the space, like my first little like community, it was like 5 or 6 of us would meet up once a week, every Friday. And it was like a little accountability circle, accountability call. And we'd set goals for like, okay, by this time next week, I want to have this, and this done. And then we'd check in with each other. All right, here's how I progress in these things and whatnot. And like, that was like completely like mind blowing to me. But it was like so game changing as well, and just helped me like skyrocket. And it also helped me feel like I wasn't alone. Even at like this level now too, it's like I'm still looking for that, right? Like I don't think that will ever change, because it's just like new levels come new devils. And so you're always going to face new challenges and stuff like that. So I think you're just going to go through seasons and cycles of those same emotions of like, am I doing this all wrong? What am I doing? What's wrong with me? Right? How do you deal with this and stuff like that, until you like find those other people who are like ahead of you, and they're like, oh yeah, dude, I went through the same shit. Like literally just did this, this, and this. And they're like, yeah, you're good. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then just correct. And then those guys are doing the same thing to like people above, and it's pretty cool. But
yeah, there's one thing. Go ahead. Or one thing like Mr. Beast said that I was listening to him say. He's like, when I started doing videos, I had like 5 guys that we'd all talk about. I don't know if you heard it, but and the collaboration and them like working together and figuring out the problem solving and keeping each other accountable led to so much more. It's like a pressure cooker. Mm-hmm. It's like we've got, I don't know how many people are in the Summit acquisition, but
it's like 130 right now.
Yeah. 130, that's sick. But like all of us, it's like a pressure cooker, because it's like, I've gone through this is my perspective. I'm giving people advice, people are giving me advice. And it's like, I can get so much more accomplished. Like Hermosi says, if I'm making one decision a day versus you making one decision a month, like it's exponentially different. Yeah. And so just getting questions answered, helping people, and using like other people's experience, like brings me so much further ahead for sure.
That's awesome. Curious as well, because I know we were talking about this earlier at dinner, or just before dinner. You were like in the Wins channel, you were like typing a win because you just signed a client for like, what was it, like 2K or something like that?
Something like that.
And then as you're typing, somebody else drops in there like, oh yeah, I just like, well, like you tell that story, because I'm curious to hear like your perspective on it, because it can go out, like it can be kind of a blessing and a curse to be surrounded by like guys who are like kind of above you too, because it does kind of like, it humbles you a little bit.
Diminishes your wins a
Yeah,
little
it
bit.
makes you feel like a bit of a small fish, but nonetheless, like that's how you, by stacking those, that's how you get there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious to, I know it's not really a question, but I know, you know, kind of what I'm talking about. It's like,
Yeah. Like last year when I started, it was like if I could just get to 10K a month, I'd be the man. Like that's just all I need to get to is to 10K a month. And then I got to 10K a month, but I was like a month in this program. And so I think I had hit 13K in February, cash collected. And I was like typing like 13K for February, super excited. And then I see another guy post, finishing out February, it's a 40K month, super jacked. And it was probably like not like, it's like, oh man, like this happens all the time for me, almost. But like still happy that it was 40K, you know, trying to get to 50K, but whatever.
yeah,
And I like, it took me a long time because I like looked at it and I was like, do I even want to send this? Like 13K looking at like 40K. And I waited probably like half a day almost. Because I was like, it feels less impactful now. And I talked to my wife and I was like, she's like, this is so dumb. Like you accomplished this and this is like a record breaking month for you. You should be so excited. But yeah, it's like comparison is, you know, the killer of joy. And that is one of those double-edged swords, being around people who are hitting those 30, 40, 50K months. But it's the room that I want to be in. And so I was like, all right, screw it. Like I'm putting it in there, even though like, yeah, it feels a little bit like less than now that he said that. But my goal is to cheer him on and like still cheer myself on for the wins because I'm playing the game against myself. Like I'm not playing against like other people, you know.
That's
but
awesome.
it was hard. It took me.
Really, no, really good story. I think it's amazing that you shared that. Thank you for doing that. And I think the cool thing about the community is that sometimes those people who are having those wins are the first ones in a lot of cases that are also supporting the other people because they've been through that, which I think is a really cool thing. Like, yeah, it's hard, of course, when we're all of us here are high achievers and very ambitious and have big goals to have that feeling. But in the end, everyone, you know, like if you're comparing your step 3 with someone else's step 10, it's like, it's not a fair comparison and we tend to forget to do that. But
Yeah, and Austin said like, he's like, because I had talked through it with him, I had like a one-on-one call with him and I was like, yeah, like, and I kind of ran through the scenario. He was like, well, one, that's super dumb and like you should be super excited, just like period. But also, like you're paying like 50 a day for ads and he's paying like 300 a day for ads. So like, yeah, he should have this X amount X return. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right.
play the game.
Yeah, it's like another thing. It's like, don't compare, you know?
Yeah. So this is a double-edged sword. So it's like on one hand, when there's people above you, it like kind of you're like, shit, I suck. But then the other, it's like it kind of forces you to raise your standards.
Yeah.
Right. And then like next thing you know, a few months from now, you're probably gonna be looking back in this conversation when you're writing that win. Just hit my first 40K month. Right.
Yeah,
And then
100%.
somebody else will probably be like thinking the same way. Oh
Yeah.
man, do I post it? My 10K, like 15, right? And like it's just gonna continue. But again, yeah, like you can't compare your step like 3 to somebody's step 10, and then also the inputs, the ad spend, all that too. Curious to hear your take on this as well, Eric. And then I know it is kind of getting late, so we can start to wrap things up as well.
100%. Sorry.
We're running out of water.
My take on like the community in general, or specifically with comparing myself to others, or
Yeah, just how, like, what's your experience been just like having a community of other guys to link arms with and build and grow together?
yeah, man. So it was really funny to me that when you framed this question, you called like the community an intangible, because the community is the reason I joined Summit Acquisition. If you didn't have a community, I would not have joined. So I was a part of a nutrition program that is really kind of like a human behavior philosophy kind of program. And they have these like 4 tenets that's basically like you need these 4 things to have success in any given area. And one of the 4 is affiliations or community. So I was like, okay, I need to get involved in a room of people that are all doing the same thing that I want to do in business. And then immediately it was like, okay, Summit Acquisition, because I was friends with Lee, and Lee was having a great time. And Lee was in the program that I was in first, where, you know, the coach, it's like, I learned some great fundamentals, but at the end of the day, it's just like, he wasn't a very great coach, which I'm not upset about, because now that I've had the experience of what a not great coach is like I have the confidence of calling you guys like actually good coaches, because I have the frame of reference of what it's like to be in a program where the coach, like, it's not up to snuff, you know? So, yeah, for me, like, the community is the reason that I joined, and it's the reason I'm here in Vegas. Like, you know, like, I have a pretty nice life in Los Angeles. I don't need to like, I don't need to go like spend a week in an Airbnb with just anybody. But like, I'm here hanging out with you guys because like, because I just wanted to party the entire week. So no, it's like, it's a very special thing. And I think I just have 2 other points. Is that one, before joining Summit Acquisition, I had been in business for about 9 or so months at that point, I guess. And I really felt like I was rowing a boat in the ocean, like in the middle of the ocean. And like, I'm rowing as hard as I can, and I know I'm making progress, but like, I'm in the middle of the fucking ocean. There's nothing else around. And then all of a sudden I get into this community, and it's like, oh, there's all these other people. And now we're like rowing together. Now there's some landmarks. And it's like, okay, now I can see the progress. And it's not so much that I'm trying to out-row everybody, as much as it's like, yeah, like, let's all row as hard as we can, and we can kind of, you know, a little bit of friendly competition is always nice. So yeah, like, having a frame of reference and just not feeling alone has been really, really significant for me. And then the last thing that I'll say is that the community gives me a opportunity to participate, and the more that I participate, the more that I get out of the program. Because dude, like, I'll just speak factually for a moment. I probably post and comment on Slack more than most people do. Every time I post and comment, like, I get scared, I get insecure. I'm like, what if they're going to take this the wrong way? But I continue to engage, and it only increases my confidence in my business, my confidence in the community, and it increases my relationship with everybody in the community. And it's like, nothing bad has ever happened from me just engaging in the community more and more. And I guess I'll finish with this, is that when we did our very first couple calls, it was this kind of special, like, group-oriented thing that you were just kind of testing out. And I had my mentality on those calls that, like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to have a positive energy, I'm going to add to this situation, I'm going to ask as many questions as I possibly can, and I'm going to support all of these people, and I'm going to be as focused on what Jeremy is saying, so that I can help other people be focused as well, and I want to lead by example in that way. And so that was 5 months ago, something like that. Last week, we're at the Harmozy event, and this guy with glasses and a beard comes up to me that I had never seen before, and he shakes my hand, and he's like, are you Eric Davis? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, dude, you're my hero. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, I've been listening to like the recordings of all those group calls with like you and Jeremy, and like just the way that you were in those meetings has been so inspiring to me, and like your story of how you've grown your program. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is crazy. So yeah, man, it's like you've created an opportunity for me to participate. And that's a really big, significant thing. And the more that I participate, like the more value that I get out of it. And like if someone thinks that that's intangible, like that's their problem. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Shout out Mohammed.
Yes. Shout out Mohammed.
Man,
He's killing it.
He got his first $5,600 PIF
Nice.
like 2 days ago, or 3
Wow.
days ago, or something like that. This week.
Crushing it.
And yeah, super cool. And yeah, so anyways, that's awesome. But yeah, one final thing I'll say on that too is like both you guys are like, you're both very active in the community. Comment, like posting your wins, showing up all the time. So like that doesn't go unnoticed. And so I just want to say from both of us and everybody else, like we appreciate you guys doing that and leading by example, helping everybody else too, because I know it does, like, yeah, the more you give, the more you get. And it does really just like solidify that bond. It makes it super cool, like for us to see the community just thrive and grow. And now it's like this own beast of its own, which is just awesome. So again, thank you guys for being such awesome guys and such awesome people. And like, again, like because you've given so much, now it's like you get like we wouldn't just like hang out with anybody, right? And we want to hang out with you guys specifically as well because like you guys add so much, you contribute a lot, and like we just want to say appreciate you guys and absolutely crushing it.
Well,
and,
thank you too, man. I mean, what I've felt like being in the program, and I think it's really, really cool, is like on the group calls, when I ask you questions, like in Slack or whenever it is, I never feel like it's a burden. Whenever you respond with like an answer, even like how you respond to other people on the calls, it's not like, oh, why would you ask this question? Like this isn't the sales like call, like you can't ask this question here. Like, and I think that just speaks a lot to like you as a coach and a leader. Like you want to help people, and a lot of people don't. You know, a lot of people are like, I would rather not answer this question. And so I just really appreciate that. Like I can ask you something and I know like you're going to be like, let me really think about this and give you like a solid, helpful answer. And like, then you ask for feedback. You're like, how did that sound? Like, does that make sense? Like, do you have like a solid plan of action now? And like getting that is like super helpful. So thanks, dude.
Appreciate you.
Well,
boys.
so much. Thank you.
Yes,
Bring it in, boys. Bring it in.
The mountain.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, boys.
Appreciate you guys.
Seriously, crushing it.
Yeah.
It's been a blast, and we got a lot more to do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Haven't even started.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll do a standing up. There we go.
Yeah.
But thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate you a ton. And yeah, if you want to be a part of the community and grow and crush it alongside a bunch of other killers, links in the description, or DM me on Instagram.
Don't want to miss out.
We'll see you inside.
See you in the program.